Have you ever imagined becoming a famous historical figure? Not just reading their name, but slipping into their quiet childhood, their uncertain dreams, and the deep breath they took before history knocked on their door. Tonight, you will become someone like that. Tonight, you are George Washington, and your story begins not on a battlefield or in a grand hall, but beneath the soft green shade of Virginia trees. Take a moment before the dream begins to let your breath slow. And if you enjoy drifting through time this way, remember, you're welcome to follow along, night after night. There are many sleepy journeys waiting for you. Now, let's return to the year 1732, to a small plantation near the Potomac River, where you were born under the soft light of a February morning. The air is still. The world is quiet. And so are you. You're the first child of Augustine and Mary. You are not yet tall, not yet strong. Just a boy who watches clouds move above distant hills. A boy who learns to listen before he speaks. Your home in Westmoreland County is not rich in gold, but rich in silence. Your father is often busy tending to the land, and your mother, stern but steady, teaches you discipline with a quiet kind of love. There are no kings here, no armies, only slow mornings, simple tools, and the creak of wooden fences under the sun. You chase fireflies through the evening grass. You hear stories of honor and virtue, of duty and God, told in low voices by the hearth. You don't know what the future holds. You only know you feel something stirring inside when the horses gallop past, when the tobacco wagons roll out, when the creek behind the house sings its sleepy song. Your father teaches you the value of land, not as a prize, but as a promise. That land, if cared for, can give more than food. It gives identity. But then, when you are just 11 years old, your father dies. The world, which once felt steady and wide, now feels smaller, quieter still. Your inheritance is modest. Your schooling is cut short. You are not sent to study abroad like your older brothers, but you don't complain. You begin to work with numbers. You copy letters. You practice your penmanship until every curl is neat, until every capital letter stands tall like a soldier. You draw maps. You chart imaginary rivers and forests in your mind. You spend long hours beneath trees, feeling the hum of the land. It is here, in these quiet boyhood years, that something in you sharpens. Not ambition, not yet, but steadiness. You do not shout. You do not rush. You learn to hold your breath, longer than most, to wait, to endure. And so, as you grow taller and your hands grow stronger, you begin to look west, not toward war, but toward work. A friend of the family offers you a chance to train as a surveyor, to walk the forests, measure the land, sketch its shape into parchment. You accept at just 16. You ride into the wilderness with compass and quill. The world feels vast, the trees older than time. You sleep under stars. You listen to the wind through pine needles and learn the many voices of silence. No one knows your name out here, but you begin to know yourself. You walk through rain, through frost, through tangled brush. You learn patience from stones and resilience from rivers. By day, you work. By night, you rest, soar, content and quiet. This is not glory. This is not history. This is the quiet beginning. And you, George Washington, are slowly becoming a man who can stand through storms, because you first learned how to stand still in the forest. And as you drift into sleep now, feel the soft pull of the Virginia wind, the hush of the stream behind your boyhood home, and the first sense, faint but certain, that one day people will say your name with reverence. But for now, you are just a boy beneath the trees. Let the night hold you gently. Let the past surround you like fog on a meadow, and rest in the beginning of your story. The forest never truly leaves you. Even as your limbs lengthen and your stride grows sure, the quiet wisdom of the woods follows like a shadow. From the boyhood creeks of Westmoreland to the deep interior beyond the Blue Ridge, you carry the hush of trees inside your ribs. You are just 16 when your boots press into the untamed wilderness of Western Virginia. The land is not yet neatly drawn, only guessed at in smudged ink on old maps. But you walk it, measure it, breathe it. You ride with a surveying party sent to claim and mark territory for Lord Fairfax. The names sound lofty, noble, foreign, but the work is humbler, harder. Your hands bleed as you carve stakes into rocky ground. Your face stings with wind and sun, but there is peace in the effort, in the way your mind quiets when your compass finds true north. The men around you are older, rougher, but they respect the way you carry yourself, tall, silent, attentive. You don't speak much, but when you do, you're clear. Not with flair, but with calm by firelight. You sketch topographies, elevations, forest trails. You draw what others pass by, noticing where the land rises, where it dips, where it flows. And though you never call it by name, you are learning a kind of language, the language of terrain, of patience, of presence. The frontier is wild and full of sound, yet you sleep soundly in its lap. Wolves may howl in the distance, but your breath remains steady. The stars spin overhead like slow lanterns. In the silence, you feel something sacred taking root inside you, the kind of strength that doesn't demand attention, but simply endures. You return to civilization changed, not in appearance perhaps, but in awareness. Your brothers see it. The overseers at Mount Vernon see it, and the colonial elite, when they meet the young man who now commands respect without needing to raise his voice, they see it too. By 17, you are officially appointed surveyor of Culpeper County. It's not just a title, it's a trust. The people you work for count on your honesty, your accuracy. Your word becomes your currency, your signature, your oath. But though the profession offers income, it offers something deeper still, a map of your inner world. Every path you chart outside teaches you something about the roads within. The idea of duty begins to take form, not the glamorous kind, but the quiet one, like tending soil, like listening before speaking, like carrying a nation before it knows your name. And in the gentle hush of evening, after days spent measuring stone and tree, you begin to think of what your life might become, not a surveyor forever, not just a farmer, either something larger. But you do not chase that dream. You do not speak of it aloud. You simply let it rest beside you, like a sleeping hound by the fire, patient, warm, waiting. Then comes a letter, an invitation, a chance to accompany your half-brother Lawrence on a voyage to the Caribbean. You are 18. Your mother does not want you to go. She fears the fever, the distance, the unknown. But your brother is ill, and you are loyal. You board the ship and sail south. And as the Virginia coastline fades behind you, you do not yet know how this short voyage will reshape your destiny. You land in Barbados, lush, humid, foreign. The sun is different here, the trees broader, the air heavy with salt and sugar. You are fascinated, observant. You write journals about the island's layout, its people, its customs. But then the fever finds you, smallpox. Your skin burns, your body shakes. You lie in a dark room, sweating and weak, your breath thin and raspy. Lawrence keeps watch, the island outside buzzing with unfamiliar life. You survive, your face bears the faint scars of it, but more importantly, your body carries immunity. You do not know it yet, but this sickness will one day save your life. While others around you fall to smallpox in war camps, you will remain untouched. Strong. Lawrence does not recover. You return to Virginia, with grief quietly packed into your saddlebag. You are different now, not just older, sharper, and emptier in some ways. Your brother had always been your model, a soldier, a gentleman, a mentor. With him gone, the weight of expectation falls more fully on your shoulders. And so you begin to step forward. You ride to Williamsburg. You meet Virginia's governors, listen to debates, observe the gentle war of words between colonies and crown. You don't speak much, but you're always watching, always learning. And then, another letter, an appointment, this time as a district adjutant with the Virginia militia. You, George Washington, are no longer a boy with ink-stained hands. You are now a man in uniform. You drill men. You inspect arms. You ride across the colony, representing authority you did not seek, but will not refuse. Still, you are not yet fully tested. That test, brutal, uninvited, will arrive soon, out of the fog of war and pride. But for now, in the warmth of candlelight, you rest, and in that rest, your mind returns once more to those early forests, to the long walks, to the compass needle that never lied, to the stars that still whisper to you above Mount Vernon's hills. Sleep, young Washington. The land still holds your name gently, as if waiting. But tonight, it does not need your leadership, your decisions, your burden. Tonight, you are still just a dreamer, with maps in your satchel and silence in your soul. Let the wind quiet. Let your hands unclench. Let the past wrap around you like a woolen coat beside the hearth. And sleep, sleep, sleep. The forest's quiet is gone now, replaced by the crack of musket fire, the shouts of panicked men, and the sharp, acrid smoke of war curling through the trees. You no longer carry maps and measuring tools. Now, your hands grip reins and orders. You are no longer the boy who walked through the woods. You are the man leading others through them. Toward danger, it is 1754, and the frontier is no longer just untamed. It is contested. The French and Indian War brews like thunder on the horizon. British colonies push westward. French forces resist. Native tribes, sovereign and weary, choose sides based on promises whispered in campfires and treaties inked in English or French. You, George Washington, are just 22 years old when you march into this storm. Not as a general, not even as a seasoned soldier, but as a Virginian major with sharp instincts and a sense of duty too large for your rank. The governor of Virginia sends you to warn the French away from their post at Fort LeBoeuf. You carry the message through icy rivers and hostile woods. The French receive your letter with polite indifference. You return, exhausted and soaked, with their refusal in your satchel and the burden of escalation on your shoulders. Then comes the ambush. At Jumonville Glen. A skirmish. Sudden, bloody. You fire the first shot of what will become a global war. History will judge it many ways. A necessary warning. A reckless attack. A prelude to years of violence. But in that moment, your heart pounds with the realization. This is no longer theory, no longer diplomacy. This is war. Your makeshift fort, hastily named Fort Necessity, becomes a soggy cradle of defeat. Rain pours. Supplies dwindle. The French encircle you. And in the end, with mud at your boots and your men weakening by the hour, you sign a surrender in French. You barely understand. It is a humiliation, but it does not break you. You ride home quiet and grim, but not defeated. You study what went wrong. You remember how it felt, the fear, the disorder, the limitations. Of your knowledge, you vow to learn, and you do. The British regulars come next. Redcoats, polished and proud. Led by General Edward Braddock, they marched with drums and flags, as if through a parade rather than a wilderness. You are invited to serve as Braddock's aide-d-camp. You accept, eager to learn from trained soldiers, to see war, real war, commanded with science and order. But the frontier does not care for European pride. The army moves slowly through Pennsylvania, building roads, cutting trees. Braddock dismisses warnings of ambush. He does not understand the fluid, brutal tactics of native warriors or French irregulars. And then it happens. July 9th, 1755. The Monongahela River glints softly. In the morning sun, birds stir in the high canopy. The air is thick. Then the woods erupt. Gunfire from unseen enemies. Screams. Redcoats collapse in rows. Horses rear. Officers fall. The formation breaks, like glass. Underfoot, Braddock is struck down. You are thrown into chaos, and you do not freeze. You ride through the fire. Rallying men. Bullets rip through the air, pierce your coat. 2 horses are shot from under you. But somehow, impossibly, you remain untouched. Soldiers later swear you were invincible that day. But you know better. You were lucky, you were scared, and you were stubborn enough to keep going. You gather the remnants of the shattered army and lead the retreat, not as a general, but as a man who saw death and kept moving. This moment makes you famous in Virginia, not for victory, but for endurance. The House of Burgesses thanks you. You are appointed commander of all Virginia troops. But the truth is, it's a miserable post. The soldiers are undertrained. The frontier forts, under-provisioned. Supplies trickle. Discipline. Phrase. You write hundreds of letters begging for shoes, muskets, uniforms. You drill and drill and drill. It is not glorious, it is grinding. But through that grind you are forged. You learn how to command, not just by issuing orders, but by understanding what men fear, what they need, what they will follow. And still, a part of you longs for peace. You look forward to the day you can return to Mount Vernon, to your land, your crops, your books. But even as the war's fury quiets and treaties begin to form, you carry something deeper now, a certainty, a knowing that one day the land you fought for will want more than defense. It will want freedom. You don't say it yet, not aloud. But at night, when the fire burns low and your boots are by the tent, the door, you look out into the dark woods and wonder, what if this land could rule itself? What if loyalty to a distant king could be replaced by loyalty to an idea? You don't have the answers, not yet. But you are listening, always listening. The war ends. You resign your commission. Your back aches. Your hair, though still dark, carries the faint touch of strain that you return home, to Mount Vernon, to the soil that never questioned your worth, to the Potomac's calm whispers, to the quiet. But history has now touched you, left its mark like the scars of smallpox. You are no longer the boy with a compass. You are no longer just a Virginian planter. You are something forming, a seed beneath the frost. And though the future still sleeps, you begin to dream of liberty, not with fire, but with a slow, steady warmth rising from within. Let the war fade from your mind now. Let the gunfire recede like thunder long past. Let your heart return to stillness. Tonight, you are no longer. In retreat, you are at rest, and the world, which once watched you through gunsmoke, now watches you breathe in peace. Sleep, General, sleep. The war has ended, and you are home. The soft hills of Mount Vernon greet you like an old friend, patient and unchanged. The house stands with quiet dignity. The river moves as it always has, never rushing, never stopping. You dismount your horse and let your boots sink into familiar earth, the scent of tilled soil, of sweet hay, of ripening crops. It is more comforting than any medal or title. You are 26, now no longer the green surveyor nor the young soldier whose coat was pierced by bullets. You have seen death, command, failure, and survival, and yet, here, under the Virginian sun, you long for something simpler, something rooted. You return not as a warrior, but as a farmer. Your days begin before sunrise. You ride the perimeter of your fields. You study your land with the same precision you once used to chart forest paths. You rotate crops. You experiment with fertilizers. You replace tobacco, greedy, depleting, with wheat, corn, flax. Your journals swell with observations. You are not merely working the land, you are learning from it. You hire overseers. You manage slaves. You try to treat them justly by the standards of your time, yet history will not forget the shadows cast over this era. You know their labor feeds your estate, and that contradiction lingers in you, quietly, and then you marry. Her name is Martha Custis, a widow, a mother, a woman of wealth and poise. She brings with her 2 children and a calm steadiness that draws you like a flame in the cold. Your courtship is not fevered, but tender, respectful, warm. You marry in 1759, and from that moment forward, Mount Vernon is no longer just your house. It is your home. You become a stepfather. You never have biological children, but you raise Martha's son and daughter with care. You teach them to ride, to read, to think. Your evenings are filled with laughter and quiet conversation, with books read aloud by the fire, with the gentle rhythm of a household at peace. Years pass. You expand the estate. You design new wings to the house, plant orchards, breed mules. Your correspondence grows. You write to fellow planters, politicians, scientists. You discuss irrigation, crop rotation, even denture fittings, the teeth already beginning to give you trouble. But peace, for you, is never quite complete. You attend the House of Burgesses. You listen to debates, petitions, protests, and across the ocean, something shifts. A law, a tax, a stir. The Stamp Act. Parliament, needing money after war, begins to tax the colonies without their consent. The cry arises, no taxation without representation. In taverns and parlors, in newspapers and sermons, the idea of liberty begins to rise like steam from the soil. You are not a firebrand. You are not yet a revolutionary. But you are a Virginian, and you feel something in your chest, the same tension you once felt before battle, a deep, quiet unease. You write letters, you sign petitions, you call for resistance, not rebellion. You still believe or hope that the Crown will listen, but each new act, Sugar, Quartering, Townshend, erodes that hope. Britain does not listen. It commands. And you, George Washington, Do not take kindly to commands you did not consent to. Still, you do not raise a sword. You raise your voice cautiously, solemnly, your friends to feel the shift. Patrick Henry, fiery and eloquent. Thomas Jefferson, brilliant and philosophical. You walk among them in Williamsburg, exchanging careful words, worried glances. You speak of rights, of duty, of destiny. You begin to read more political pamphlets, more newspapers. You sense that the colonies are no longer just settlements. They are becoming something else, something unified, something awake, and within you, the old restlessness stirs. You try to shake it off with long rides, with early mornings, with more improvements to your farm. You breed hounds, you host guests, you manage debts. But even your peaceful fields whisper now. They whisper of tyranny, of independence, of a future that demands more than crops and comfort. You do not rush toward it. You never do. But when the first shots are fired in Lexington and Concord, when the colonies gather in Philadelphia to decide what must be done, you feel the call again, this time, not from a governor, not from a brother, but from your country, and you know it is time. Time to rise once more, not as a soldier of a king, but as a servant of a people. As you ride north toward the Continental Congress, you look back only once at Mount Vernon, the porch bathed in golden light, Martha waving softly, the fields stretching to the river. You do not know when you will return. You only know that you must go, not for glory, not for gain, but because duty once more knocks at your door. Let your mind rest now. Let the questions of war and peace float like mist above the Potomac. Let the river run gently through your thoughts, for tonight you are not yet commander. You are simply a farmer, a husband, a man standing on the edge of history, and the dawn is waiting. Sleep, George, sleep. You arrive in Philadelphia with a heavy heart and a calm face. The city hums with tension. Carriages roll across cobbled streets. Men speak in hushed tones behind closed shutters. The bells of Christchurch ring over arguments about liberty, law, and war. You walk into the Second Continental Congress as a delegate from Virginia. But it does not take long before all eyes turn to you, not for your words, which are few, but for your presence, which is firm. You do not seek command. You have tasted battle. You know its cost. But others speak your name with rising certainty. They remember your discipline, your loyalty, your quiet strength. They see in you what you've never claimed for yourself, the image of a leader who does not want power. You wear your old militia uniform, plain and dusty, as a symbol of readiness. You do not speak loudly, but you do speak clearly. You will not ask for the position, but if it is offered, you will serve. On June 15th, 1775, you are unanimously appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. There are no parades, no trumpets, only nods, quiet applause, and a flicker of fear in your gut. You do not sleep well. That night, you write to Martha. You tell her, gently, that duty calls you away again. You do not speak of glory. You speak of responsibility, of sacrifice. You know she will not stop you. She knows you will not stay. You mount your horse and ride north to Boston, where the British redcoats occupy the city, and revolution now has teeth. The army you inherit is not really an army at all. It is a collection of militias, some armed with muskets, others with pitchforks. Their tents sag, their powder is damp, their spirits flicker like dying lanterns, but they look at you with hope. And so you look back with calm. You walk the camp. You speak to the soldiers. You ride along the lines in rain and wind. Your presence alone steadies them. You issue new orders. Discipline returns, not with punishment, but with example. Still, the siege is long. The British are well fortified. Your army is not ready to storm their walls. So you wait and plan, and then something remarkable from Fort Ticonderoga. Cannons arrive, dragged for miles across, snow and ice by General Henry Knox, the weight of iron and will. You place them on Dorchester Heights, overlooking Boston. One morning, the British wake and see your artillery above them, and they leave without a shot fired. You have liberated Boston with patience, not battle. It is your first victory. It tastes of quiet triumph, but it is only the beginning. The war will stretch on like a storm that will not pass. You will know defeat. You will know betrayal. You will walk through the ashes of villages and ride through frozen forests with torn gloves. You will not always win, but you will never stop. Because this cause, this fragile, flickering hope of independence, is not built on might. It is built on endurance. And that you have in abundance. You do not take pay for your command. You keep your accounts scrupulously. You write letters late into the night. You read every dispatch. You agonize over every decision. Your officers begin to model themselves after you. You build an army not just of men, but of character. And all the while, you remain unsure. Unsure of victory. Unsure of yourself, but sure that liberty is worth the doubt. You never seek to become a legend, only a servant. But the myth begins to form in paintings, in newspapers, in stories told by campfires. A tall, stoic figure on horseback, the general, who will not kneel, and yet, beneath it all, you are still the boy from the woods. You still carry the hush of the Virginia pines. In your voice, you still believe that silence can be stronger than shouting. That honor is worth more than ambition. And so you press forward, toward New York, toward Trenton, toward Valley Forge, and beyond. The fire of revolution grows around you, but you do not feed it with rage. You feed it with resolve. Tonight, let that fire burn gently in the distance. Let the noise of battle soften into memory. Let your body, worn from duty, sink into calm once more. You are not on horseback now. You are not at the war table. You are simply yourself, a reluctant fire, burning steady. In the wind, sleep now, Commander, sleep. The road to New York is long and lined with doubt. You ride at the head of your ragtag army, their boots thin, their uniforms mismatched. Some are boys with trembling hands. Others are farmers who left behind fields unplanted. You look at them, these volunteers, these believers, and you feel the full weight of their trust. But the city you approach is different from Boston. New York is surrounded by water, wide and vulnerable. The British Navy glints on the horizon, ships like black teeth along the bay. They come with thousands of troops, cannons, seasoned generals. You prepare defenses the best you can. You dig trenches, station men, fortify hills. But inside, you are outmatched, and then the attack comes. The British land on Long Island. They sweep through Brooklyn with professional precision. Your lines break. Your generals falter. The fog of war rolls in, real and metaphorical. And yet, from within that fog, you find your moment. You order a silent retreat. In the dead of night, using small boats, you ferry your entire army across the East River. No one speaks. Oars splash. Even the wind seems to obey. When morning comes, the British find empty trenches. Your army is gone, alive. It is not victory, but it is escape, a miracle of silence. And so begins a long, painful dance. Retreat after retreat. You leave New York. You fall back through New Jersey. Morale sinks. Congress flees Philadelphia in fear. Soldiers desert. Civilians lose faith. Your reputation begins to erode in whispers. Some call you incompetent, others unlucky. But you do not lash out. You do not hide. You ride through the cold, sit with your officers, and keep the soul of the army breathing through. Sheer force of will. You read Thomas Paine's new words to your men. These are the times that try men's souls, and they believe again, because you believe, even when surrounded, even when cold. Then with the year dying and the cause flickering low, you act. Christmas night, 1776. You cross the Delaware River. The wind cuts like glass. Ice forms on the edges of every sleeve, every musket barrel. The river swells with chunks of frozen black water. Men shiver in silence. Some fall. You do not turn back. On the other side, Trenton, the Hessian soldiers are asleep, warm in their barracks, their boots off, their guns stacked neatly. You strike fast. In less than an hour, it is done. A clean, quiet victory. The kind that doesn't roar, it breathes. The kind that saves a movement from collapse. You press on, you win again. At Princeton, and suddenly, hope returns like a forgotten sun breaking through heavy cloud. People begin to speak your name with reverence again, but you remain still inside. You know the war is not won by flashes of glory. It is won by months of mud, by small victories, by men who keep going. And so you do. You keep going. You manage egos among your generals. You balance loyalties. You watch for spies. You write hundreds of letters to Congress, begging for supplies, boots, coats, powder, food. And again the answer is the same. Little or none. You make do. You share the hardships of your men. You ride with them, sleep near them, eat their meager rations. You never ask of them what you would not do yourself. This becomes your greatest power, not strategy, not speed, but example. You are a commander without enough troops, without enough food, without enough support, and yet your army still follows you, because you never give up, even when others would, especially then. You begin to understand that leadership is not about brilliance. It is about endurance. It is about standing in the storm longer than anyone else and still whispering, "We go on." You write to Martha often. Her letters bring you warmth. She sends wool socks and gentle words. You miss her deeply, though you rarely say so. But in quiet moments, you read her letters over and over until the words become soft as lullabies. Winter comes again, not the one at Valley Forge, not yet, but you feel it creeping into your bones. Still, you ride forward. Still, you plan. Still, you carry the hope of a people who are learning painfully that freedom is not granted. It is earned, and earned slowly. Tonight, as your horse rests and the stars blink above your tent, let the chill fade from your memory. Let the ache in your legs and the tightness in your chest melt into warmth. You are not surrounded now. You are not retreating. You are drifting softly into sleep. And the army you carry, the one that once had no uniforms, no training, no shoes, that army still breathes because you breathed first. Sleep General Washington. The cold cannot follow. You hear rest in the silence between battles, rest in the heartbeat of your cause. The Delaware River behind you is now ice and memory, but ahead lies uncertainty, always uncertainty. And yet, after Trenton, a strange new thing begins to grow in the hearts of your men. Belief. It is not loud or boastful. It does not dance in taverns or pound in fists. It is quiet, like the first green shoots pushing through frost. Hope. The British had thought your army broken, but now they are rattled. They retreat toward Princeton, wary of the ragged force that had no right to win. And so, with your blood still warm from the river crossing, you press your advantage. You do not wait for orders. You do not wait for spring. The frost is still on the ground when you make your move. The night before battle, you sleep only in short bursts, if at all. You ride alone through the moonlight, checking your lines, listening to your officers, feeling the air shift like breath held before a blow. Dawn comes with pale gold light. You engage the British near Princeton. The lines sway, your men falter, the enemy presses hard. And then you do something no general should ever do. You ride straight into the front lines. You wheel your horse between the retreating troops and the British bayonets. Musket balls slice the air around you. Smoke curls. Shouts rise. But you do not flinch. You raise your sword and shout. Not in fury, but in resolve. Your men stop, they turn, they follow. The British line breaks. Another improbable victory, not a war-ending one, but enough. Enough to prove this cause is not dying. Enough to keep Congress from collapsing. Enough to remind the people that even snow cannot silence revolution. Your legend begins to grow now. Not from vanity, you never ask for praise, but from necessity. The people need a figure, a symbol, a steady voice in a storm, and that is what you become. You move the army to winter quarters in Morristown. Supplies are scarce, blankets thin, but you make do. You build cabins. You plan ahead. You watch the roads like a hawk, waiting for the British to strike again. They don't. They've seen what you can do in snow and silence. They hesitate. That hesitation gives you time. Time to rebuild. Time to train. Time to become not just a commander of men, but the soul of a cause. In these quiet months, you write. You write to Congress, to state governors, to foreign envoys, always asking, always explaining, always trying to hold together a republic that hasn't quite been born. You walk among your soldiers at night. You speak to the ones whose feet are wrapped in rags. You pause at the fires of those who have not seen home in months. You ask about their families, their farms, their dreams. You listen, and that is why they follow you. Not because you promise riches, not because you claim certainty, but because you see them, and you never ask them to suffer alone. Spring brings movement. Again, raids, skirmishes, retreats, victories, and losses woven together like threads of a fraying flag. You make alliances, cautious ones with the French. You entertain spies, balance rivalries, smooth over jealousies among your own generals. Always the center of calm, always the steady hand. Your stepdaughter, Patsy, dies that spring. Still a young woman. You ride home briefly to be with Martha. The grief is sharp, but you do not linger in it. You return to the army, carrying sorrow like another piece of gear, strapped quietly to your saddle. The war stretches on, and you become not just the leader of troops, but the beating heart of perseverance. You are exhausted, often. Your letters grow more terse. your patience thinner, your hair grays, your face hardens. You feel the ache in your bones and the cold that never quite leaves your hands, but still you ride, still you speak, still you hold the Republic's dream, like a fragile flame between cupped hands. And so, one night, when your body refuses to dismount, you sleep in the saddle, just for a moment, just long enough to dream again of the boy with the compass, of the river, of the old Virginia woods. Let that image soothe you now. Let the weight fall from your shoulders for 1 hour, one night, one dream. You do not need to command anything tonight. You do not need to write or ride or speak. You need only breathe. The nation still forming in your shadow will wait. The battlefields will wait. History itself can wait. Tonight, let your breath deepen. Let your muscles loosen. Let the snow of Trenton melt into the quiet memory it was meant to become. Sleep. George Washington. Sleep and dream again of peace. The snow deepens and your boots crunch into the frozen earth. It is December of 1777. The year has been long, the victories rare, the doubts many. You lead your weary army into winter quarters at a place called Valley Forge, a stretch of icy fields and thin forests northwest of Philadelphia. The name will become legend, but for now, it is simply cold. Your men build huts from wet logs, their fingers trembling in the frost. The ground is too hard to dig proper foundations. The smoke from their fires rises into a sky heavy with grey silence. There are no parades here, no speeches, only the quiet sound of survival. You walk among the cabins in your heavy cloak. Each one holds 8 to 12 soldiers, huddled together in blankets made from worn-out clothes. Their faces are gaunt. Some have no shoes. Others bleed from cracked feet wrapped in rags. They still salute you, these men, their breath visible in the air, their eyes tired but loyal. You salute back. You never allow yourself to look away. You sleep little. You write constantly to Congress, to governors, to merchants. You beg for food, for coats, for medicine. Sometimes the letters go unanswered. Sometimes help arrives too late. And yet, you keep writing. You know this is the real battle, not against muskets, but against hunger, not against bayonets, but against despair. A lesser leader might have despaired too, but you draw from something deeper, something older, something rooted in silence and patience. You remember the forest, you remember the Delaware, and you remember that even in the coldest winters, something stirs beneath the surface, waiting. For spring, you call for order. You call for training, and that call is answered by a man from Prussia, Baron von Steuben, who speaks little English but carries a presence like fire in his bones. He drills the men through snow and mud. He teaches them how to fight, how to move, how to strike as one. At first, they stumble. Then they begin to march in rhythm, to reload faster, to trust one another. You watch from the hill, not with pride, but with relief. Your army is no longer a band of militias. It is becoming something more. You to change. You learn not only how to command, but how to lead. Not just in battle, but in stillness. Not just by speaking, but by enduring. There are moments when you break down, alone in your tent. Moments when you rest your head in your hands and feel the ache of failure pressing behind your eyes. But when you step outside, when the men see you tall, composed, quiet, they feel steadier. You are their pillar, and pillars do not crumble. In the open, as winter drags on, sickness spreads, typhus, dysentery, pneumonia. The burial pits grow longer. You write the names down in your journal, careful not to let them vanish into cold obscurity. And still, they stay. Your army stays, because you stay. That is your gift. George Washington, not invincibility, but presence. Spring comes slowly, the ground softens, the trees wake, the rivers sing again. And when your army emerges from Valley Forge, it is not the same. The men stand straighter, their steps are sharper, their eyes brighter. They are not invincible, but they are ready, and so are you. You lead them south, back, toward the British. You fight at Monmouth, a brutal, sweltering clash. Your horse is soaked in sweat. Your shirt clings to your back. You rally the troops as the sun beats down like judgment. You do not break, neither do they. It ends in stalemate, but it proves something vital, that your army, your people, can stand toe-to-toe with the greatest empire in the world. That this cause, this fragile, beautiful cause, can survive, and perhaps even win. You ride into camp that night with dust on your coat, your sword dull with sweat. You dismount, you breathe, and for the first time in months, you allow yourself a single, quiet smile, because the worst, perhaps, is behind you tonight. Let the memories of Valley Forge drift like snowflakes in your mind, gentle, silent, fading. Let the pain slip off your shoulders. Let the hunger be gone. You are warm now. You are safe. You have endured the deepest winter a nation could face. And so has your soul. Sleep, General. Sleep in peace. Years pass, not swiftly, not quietly, but in long marches, muddy camps, and bitter debates. The war drags on like a stubborn winter. Victories come, but so do setbacks. Your army swells, then shrinks. The French join your cause, yes, but even allies come with tension. Still, you endure. Still, you lead, and slowly, steadily, the tide begins to turn. The British now hold less than they once did. Their grip weakens like a hand grown cold. They are stretched thin, weary of the colony's defiance. But they remain dangerous, no less proud, no less armed. Then comes a glimmer, an opportunity. General Cornwallis positions himself at Yorktown, Virginia, near the Chesapeake, in a town cradled by rivers and arrogance. He believes himself secure, shielded by British ships and fortified earth. But the noose begins to tighten. The French fleet, under Admiral de Grasse, sails to block the bay. General Rochambeau marches from the north, and you begin to move too swiftly, silently, drawing your forces south from New York. Your march covers hundreds of miles. Your men travel under blazing suns, through choking dust, over roads more memory than path. But they do not complain, because you ride beside them, not ahead, not above, but with. When you arrive near Yorktown, the trap is nearly closed. You oversee the digging of trenches, the placement of cannon. You walk the lines each morning, and again by lamplight you speak. Little, as always, but when you do, the men listen, and then the siege begins. The guns roar for days. Earth shakes. Smoke rises. You write in your journal with hands that tremble less from age than from awe. You are watching a nation carve its name into history. One shovel of dirt, one cannonball, one silent, steady heartbeat at a time. Then comes the signal. Cornwallis cannot hold. On October 19th, 1781, the British general surrenders. His troops march out between your lines, their drums muffled. They lay down their arms, but Cornwallis himself refuses to appear. he sends a subordinate instead. And you, ever composed, do not show anger, only restraint, because you know this is not a moment for vengeance. It is a moment for history. A silence settles over the battlefield after the guns stop. A silence so vast you can hear flags flapping in the wind. You do not cheer, you do not weep, you bow your head softly and breathe. The war is not officially over, not yet. Treaties must be signed, papers drawn. But in your heart, you know this is the end. You write to Congress. You inform your officers. You take no grand reward, no palace, no crown, because that was never the point. You did not fight to rule. You fought so that no one would dot. In the months that follow, you visit your soldiers. Some are broken, some are bitter, many are simply tired. You speak to them, man to man, and thank them. When you ride away, many watch you go, not with chance, but with tears, because they know they will never serve under another like you. Eventually, peace comes. The Treaty of Paris is signed. The British leave. The country breathes its first breath as something truly new. And now, at last, you ride not to war, but home to Mount Vernon. The river is still there. So are the fields, the trees, the wind through the grass. Martha greets you with arms that tremble and eyes that do not hide their joy. Your estate is older, a little more weathered, but still standing. Like you walk the halls in silence, touch the wood banisters with quiet reverence. You sleep in your own bed again. But something is different. Not the house. You carry the weight of a nation's birth inside you now. Its pain, its miracle, its fragile hope. And though the war is over, you do not let go of duty. You write to governors. You monitor the disbanding of the army. You push for justice, for fair pay, for new laws, for unity among states that have only just begun to imagine what it means to be one. And then, when the work is nearly done, you do something few would dot. You step down. You resign your commission before Congress. You give back the power freely given to you. You bow and you leave. The applause, when it comes, is thunderous. But you are already outside, mounting your horse. You do not look back, because you know applause is not the reward. Peace is, tonight. Rest in that peace. Let the cannons fall silent in your memory. Let the sounds of Yorktown fade into the slow rhythm of the river near your porch. You have carried a revolution. Now let yourself be carried by sleep. Let your shoulders drop. Let your breathing slow. Let the cause you led find rest in the nation's heart and yours. Sleep, George. The applause can wait. The world watches in stunned silence. As you do the unthinkable, you give it all back. Power, command, prestige, all returned to the very hands that entrusted it to you. No wars were won for this gesture, but nations will remember it longer than any battlefield. It is December 23rd, 1783. You stand before Congress in Annapolis. The chamber is modest, the faces familiar, but the moment is not. You wear your uniform not for show, but for respect. You speak with calm clarity, your voice barely rising. You thank them, you surrender your commission, you bid them farewell, and when it is done, you bow. Not deeply, just enough to show that in this new country, even a general bows to the people. The room is still. Some weep, others nod, unable to speak. The parchment in your hand trembles slightly as you fold it. You walk out the door. No guards, no trumpets, no throne, only snow falling gently outside. You mount your horse, turn toward home, and ride Mount Vernon waits. The air feels clearer there. The land, though unchanged, feels more yours now, somehow. Not because of ownership, but because of return. Because the journey back means more than the journey out. Martha greets you with arms that linger. You stand on the porch together, watching the river flow like it always has, unaffected by revolution or applause. You tend your fields again. You rise with the sun. You check the wheat. You ride the fences. You supervise the distillery and the blacksmith's forge. You walk with your dogs, greet your workers, read letters by candlelight. People write to you daily. Some ask for advice, others for favors. Some simply want to say they witnessed history and saw you in it. You write back when you can. You always sign your letters simply, G. Washington. Not General, not Excellency, just a man again. You host guests, sometimes dignitaries, sometimes old soldiers. You share stories by firelight. You speak slowly, still never one to fill silence unnecessarily. You listen more than you talk, and still the country calls to you. You read the newspapers. You see the fractures forming between states, between factions, between visions of what this new republic should become. The Articles of Confederation prove weak. The central government is fragile. Debts go unpaid. Borders are disputed. Voices grow louder, more bitter. You try to stay removed. You cherish your peace. You tell others in letters, at dinners, even in prayer, that you have done your duty, that you have no desire to return to public life. But you also know that a house cannot stand without a solid frame, and your country is still under construction. So when word comes of a constitutional convention in Philadelphia, when your name is floated to preside over it, you do not answer right away. You walk your land in long silence. You kneel at your bedside and ask for guidance. Not glory, you speak to Martha, always honest, always gentle. She sighs. She already knows what your heart will choose. And so, once again, you saddle your horse. Once again, you ride not toward battle, but toward responsibility. Philadelphia awaits this time, not with gunpowder, but with parchment. You are elected president of the convention. The debates rage. Some argue for kingship, others for pure democracy. Some wish to preserve slavery, others to end it. There are voices of wisdom, there are voices of fear, and you sit at the head of the room, listening, guiding, rarely speaking. Your presence alone calms tempers. It reminds them why they are here, reminds them of the cost already paid for this fragile experiment. When the Constitution is signed, many breathe relief. Others fear tyranny will return in a new form. But all agree on one thing. There is only one man who can be the first president of this new nation. You do not celebrate. You do not smile. You accept with gravity because you know better than anyone what this will cost. But you also know this is your final service, not for fame, not for reward, but for peace. And so you prepare again to stand once more, in the place where the world watches, but tonight, that moment still sleeps. The porch is quiet, the wind is soft, and the Potomac sighs against its banks like a lullaby centuries old. Let that sound carry you gently into slumber. You are not yet president. You are simply a man in winter, breathing deep the air of home, and home is enough. Sleep, George, sleep before the oath. You stand beneath a grey April sky. your hand resting on the Bible, your voice steady as it carries the first oath of its kind. It is 1789, New York. City then the temporary capital of a trembling new nation buzzes with anxious hope. The streets are packed. The windows above the cobbled streets are filled with watching faces. Cannon blasts echo in salute. Bells ring out. Flags flutter in wind borne from sea and soil. But you do not smile. You stand still. You have just become the first president of the United States, and yet your heart feels no thrill, only the weight. You did not want this. In truth, you hoped another would step forward. You had already served. You had already said goodbye. But the call came again, louder, and with a chorus too great to ignore. And so, reluctantly, you accepted, because you knew what the people needed most was not a perfect leader, but a steady one, a calm one, a servant who understood chose not to love it. You walk through the cheering crowd not as a king, but as a custodian. You know each step you take sets precedent, each word you speak, each letter you sign, each silence you hold will echo forward, will be studied, mimicked, debated, feared, cherished. And yet, you remain yourself, measured, dignified, watching not only what the people say of you, but how they watch each other, how they begin to shape themselves by your example. You build a cabinet of capable men, some loyal, some difficult. Thomas Jefferson, eloquent and passionate, becomes your Secretary of State. Alexander Hamilton, brilliant and bold, becomes your Secretary of the Treasury. They clash almost immediately. Ideas fly like arrows across the cabinet table. Federal power versus states' rights. Agrarian simplicity versus industrial ambition. You sit at the head of the storm, unmoved. You listen, and then you decide. Not based on vanity, not based on popularity, but based on balance. On what will hold the center. That becomes your role more than anything, to hold the center. You travel the new nation by carriage dust, in your teeth roads, rough with rock and root. You visit cities and remote towns, shaking hands with blacksmiths and merchants, farmers and fishermen. You see not just the promise of the nation, but its fractures, north and south, slave and free, coastal and frontier, poor and powerful, and in each encounter, you carry yourself as one thing above all others, a citizen who happens to lead. You refuse to be addressed as Your Majesty or His Excellency. You insist on Mr. President, a term humble in appearance, powerful in meaning. You host formal dinners, but do not dance. You dress simply. You rise early, walk the gardens, read the papers, and write countless letters in your clean, elegant hand. And still aways you miss Mount Vernon. You think of it often in quiet hours. The porch, the river, the rustle of wheat in the breeze. You miss Martha, though she writes daily. She visits when she can, bringing the calm of home into the sharpness of government halls. But you are needed here. There is a new capital to be built, a new economy to balance, a new court system to form. Every day brings a new problem, and no blueprint to solve it. You do not complain, but you do not rest. You absorb every attack from political opponents with silence. You respond with dignity, never venom. You guide your young republic, not with ideology, but with integrity. Still, the burdens grow in the West. Settlers clash with native tribes. In the South, slavery divides conscience. In Europe, the French Revolution ignites. Allies cry out for support, but your heart hesitates. You declare neutrality not out of cowardice, but of caution. You know that one wrong step could drag your new nation back into war, into debt, into ruin. And though your advisors argue loudly, though the public writes scathing columns and sings angry ballads, you hold firm, because you are not here to please, you are here to preserve. That is your oath, that is your burden, and that is your legacy. You serve not 1 term, but 2.8 years. 8 years of storms and compromise, of anger and vision. And still, you think daily of Mount Vernon, of the soil, of the stars over your porch, of Martha's soft laugh as she hands you tea. But tonight, before you return home, let the halls of your mind fall quiet. Let the noise of politics fade, like distant waves. You are not debating policy now. You are not holding your nation together. With every fiber of your will, you are simply breathing, and beneath that breath, the soil still waits. The porch still stands. The nation, thanks to your steadiness, still holds. Sleep now, Mr. President. Sleep as the man you have always been. Not a conqueror, not a king, but a citizen, first and last. And the dream goes on. The title still rests on your shoulders, but the cloth is wearing thin. It is your 2nd term as president, and you begin to feel the winds shift. Not the winds of war, though they howl from across the Atlantic. No, these are quieter, colder. Winds born from within. Division, what began as thoughtful debate, now grows bitter. The unity you once hoped for fractures into factions. Federalists and Democratic Republicans, Hamilton and Jefferson. Newspapers print insults instead of reasoned argument. Even former allies question your motives. You sit in your office, hands folded, eyes closed for a long moment. You have never wanted power for power's sake. But now you must wield it carefully, because every decision you make ripples outward. Every choice becomes a precedent. Every silence a statement. Still, you do not yield to rage. You do not strike back. You hold your tongue even when your name is dragged through mud. You meet disrespect with patience, because this republic is still learning how to argue on, not tear itself apart. In the South and West, unrest stirs. Farmers in Pennsylvania, crushed by taxes on whiskey, rise in rebellion. They threaten federal agents, burn barns, raise flags of defiance. And so, once again, you do what no president has done before. You lead troops not in war, but in law. You ride at the head of a militia of 15,000 men to Pennsylvania, not to punish, but to protect the rule of law. You wear the uniform once more. Your posture is straight. Your message is clear. This new government will not be ignored, and when the rebels see you, they scatter. There is no battle, no blood, only your presence and the immense weight of your integrity. You accept no celebration, no triumph. You simply turn your horse homeward again. Even victories now feel heavy, abroad. The chaos of the French Revolution grows ever more violent. Guillotines, anarchy, war. Some Americans cheer it, others recoil. You do not rush to choose sides. France was your ally in war, but neutrality, you believe, is essential to survival. The nation is too young, too fragile to be pulled into the wars of Europe. You issue the Neutrality Proclamation, simple, clear, unpopular. Critics accuse you of cowardice. They call you a monarch in plain clothes. They paint you in papers with crowns or devil's horns. You read none of it, or rather, you read it and let it pass, because you have faced worse, because the truth does not need applause. Behind closed doors, you worry. The party divisions deepen. Hamilton's banks and taxes. Anger, many. Jefferson resigns his post, bitter and exhausted. You had hoped they would learn to listen. Instead, they learn to fight. And you feel tired in your bones. You long for Mount Vernon. You think of mornings without meetings, afternoons without arguments, evenings without letters stacked high, demanding your attention. And still, you stay. Because the nation is not yet steady. The roads are still dusty and incomplete. The Constitution still breathes like a newborn alive. But delicate, you attend funerals now more than you'd like. Friends and soldiers pass. You visit the tomb of your stepdaughter. You hold Martha's hand a little longer each evening. You write fewer letters with your own hand. Now arthritis creeps into your knuckles. Your vision blurs, but your resolve never dims. In these quiet moments, you begin to write something new. A farewell, not a speech. A letter, carefully crafted, thoughtfully worded. You write and rewrite. You show drafts to Hamilton. You strip out the praise. You focus on wisdom. You ask the people to stay united. You warn against faction. You plead for neutrality abroad. You encourage morality, education, civic virtue, and most of all, you say goodbye. You announce your decision not to seek a third term. It shocks the country. Some beg you to stay. Others breathe a sigh of relief. But all agree it is the most powerful gesture of all. You give up power again, and once more, history holds its breath. The election follows. John Adams is chosen. The transition is peaceful, orderly, without swords, without blood. The first in a long chain of leadership, passed not by force, but by trust. You pack your things. You fold the uniforms, still smelling faintly of smoke and sweat. You step down, you mount your horse, and you ride home, not as a conqueror, not as a ruler, but as a man who has done all he can. Tonight, let the storms of politics fall silent. Let the names fade, the arguments quiet. There is no need to answer critics now. There is no letter you must write, no treaty to negotiate, no army to raise, only peace and sleep. Let it come like a tide. Let it wash away the long years you have served, you have led, you have endured, and now you rest. Sleep, President Washington. Sleep in the calm you gave your country. You return to Mount Vernon not as a soldier, not as a president, but as a man who has finally laid down the burden. It is March 1797. The sky over the Potomac glows with the soft pinks of early spring. The fields are quiet. The air carries no scent of gunpowder, no trace of politics only, the breeze over tilled earth, the perfume of budding apple blossoms, and the hum of bees in the orchard dot. You step onto the familiar porch. The floorboards creak beneath your boots, as they always have. Martha meets you with eyes that have waited, endured, and finally, at last, relaxed. You are home, and home is enough. You rise early again, but this time not to read reports or debate legislation. You rise to walk among your gardens, to visit the barns, to lean against the wooden fence and watch the land you've longed for bloom beneath your gaze. You ride through your estate, not in haste, but in peace. You nod to the workers some hired, some enslaved, each one a part of the vast, imperfect machinery that keeps this place alive. You speak their names. You ask after their families, in private. You wrestle with the contradictions. You have defended freedom with every breath, and yet, Your estate runs on bondage. You begin to reconsider. Quietly, thoughtfully, you write your will in secret, declaring that your slaves shall be freed after your death. It is not enough, but it is something. A gesture of conscience in a world not yet ready to change. You read again books sent by admirers, volumes on agriculture, political treatises, poetry. You write a few final letters, but you no longer chase replies. You savor long silences. Martha sits beside you on the porch in the evenings, her knitting soft against your sleeve. You do not speak often. You do not need to. You both watch the sun set over the water, and that, now, is the most important work you do. You hear news from afar of Adams in office, of Jefferson still debating, of the parties continuing their ceaseless dance. But you do not intervene. You do not write editorials. You do not seek to be heard, because you understand something others do not. That sometimes the greatest influence comes not from speaking, but from stepping away. You become not a leader in motion, but a symbol at rest. You walk among the tombs of your family. You visit the graves of your stepchildren. You feel the weight of time, not in sadness, but in clarity. The arc of your life has been long, and its meaning now lies in stillness. As autumn returns, your steps grow slower. You notice the stiffness in your joints, the tremor in your hands. You sleep more, speak less, smile often. You are at peace, and yet one last storm comes. A sudden chill, a sore throat, a fever that creeps faster than you expect. Your doctors come quickly. They bleed you, as was custom, and you endure it with stoic calm. You thank your servants. You speak kindly to Martha. You ask only that you not be buried until the third day. You do not weep. You do not panic. You only ask that the work be done properly. As always, on December 14th, 1799, you lie in your bed, the fire crackling softly nearby. You whisper, "I am just going. Have me decently buried, and do not let my body be put into the vault in less than 3 days." Then you say no more. You breathe once more, and then you do not. The nation mourns like a son who has lost his father. Cities hold parades. Churches ring bells. Columns are written, portraits painted, statues begun. Even your critics stop their tongues, because they know what has been lost, because they feel it. Deep in the bones of the country you helped birth, they feel the silence left by your absence. But tonight, in this dream, you are not gone. You are simply here, on the porch, watching the river, feeling the warmth of a fading sun against your skin. There is no pain now, no duty calling, no burden pressing, only rest, only legacy, only the peace that comes when a life, lived well, comes to its close, like a final page turned slowly beneath steady fingers. Sleep now, George. The sun has set, and the stars are coming out to take watch in your stead. A gentle note before we begin, through 13 chapters. You slipped inside Washington's own thoughts. You were the river-born boy, the reluctant general, the steady president. Now, as the story nears its hush, let the viewpoint drift outward. Like a lantern set afloat on quiet water, the tale will glow from a tender distance, speaking of him rather than as him, so you may rest, free of every burden he once carried. The winter of 1799 settled over Mount Vernon with neither fanfare, nor dreadingly the slow, inevitable folding of leaves into earth, of daylight into longer dark. Washington rose before dawn, as always, the habit of decades refusing to loosen its grip. he still walked the frost-rimmed paths that wound between house, barns, and riverbank, pausing to test a fence post here, to greet an overseer there, to nod at a chimney sending up its first braid of wood smoke. Those who watched him closely sensed the weight of years in the gentlest cues, a hand lingering on a banister, a pause at the top stair as though listening for an absent drumbeat, a soft smile that settled more quickly into quiet reflection. Yet his back remained straight, his blue-grey eyes clear, his voice unhurried on anchor in human form. Inside the mansion, Martha's calm industry shaped the rhythm of every room. She oversaw linens, correspondence, and the ceaseless parade of guests who still arrived hoping to see the hero at peace. Journalists, farmers, foreign dignitaries, they all wished for a few minutes beneath Washington's porch. He obliged them, with measured warmth, pouring Madeira, discussing crop rotations, refusing nearly every invitation to re-enter public life. Each visitor left with the same impression: serenity, tinged by something deeper, like distant bells heard only in memory. In private, he reread letters from former comrades: Hamilton pressing for a stronger navy, Knox reminiscing about sentry posts, Lafayette yearning for American soil once more. He answered in careful hand, diligence never fading, though the joints of his fingers ached in cold weather. When evening fell, he sat by the parlor hearth, reading ancient philosophy or the latest treatise on soil conservation, spectacles perched, low flames painting soft gold across the lines of his face. Occasionally, an unforeseen sadness drifted through the house, the echo of lost stepchildren, the knowledge that the Republic was bright yet fragile. Newspapers beyond the Potomac teemed with partisan quarrels. Washington did not reply. His silence itself began to feel like counsel. Friends suspected he trusted time and the steady example of voluntary retirement to teach lessons argument never could. December arrived, trailing a curtain of chill mist from the river. Ever dutiful, Washington rode the plantation boundaries to inspect drainage ditches threatened by recent rains. The air cut sharp against his cheeks. Snowflakes settled on the brim of his hat. Returning that evening, he hung his cloak, still damp, remarking to Martha that the weather would clear by morning. He was wrong. Night deepened, and with it came a raw soreness in his throat. He slept fitfully, waking in the blue-grey half-light. Before dawn, servants urged rest. He insisted on rising. Orders for the day left his lips no less clearly than usual, but the voice was hoarse, each word edged with strain. Cold drizzle returned mid-morning, and by sundown he shivered despite the hearth's glow. Physicians were summoned. Within hours, they diagnosed a severe inflammation of the windpipe. Following common practice, they bled him first 1 pint. Then another, believing relief lay in the draining of bad humors. Washington accepted each procedure with composed gratitude, thanking doctors and attendants alike. Yet, as the night advanced, his breathing grew labored, each inhalation a climb against invisible weight. Those gathered at his bedside would recall no sign of panic. When offered laudanum for pain, he shook his head. Clarity mattered. Between rasping breaths, he spoke spare instructions: debts to settle, a new tenant farmer to appoint, and most essential a strict command that his body not be entombed until 3 days had safely passed, forestalling any chance of premature burial. Practical to his final moment, he also reminded Martha to retrieve his 2 pocket ledgers from the desk drawer. Balances must square. Snow tapped against the windows, soft as a lullaby. Shortly after 10 at night, Washington whispered a final sentence. Some said it was "'tis well." Others that he merely expressed willingness to rest. Either way, the meaning was clear. He closed his eyes, exhaled once, and let go. News traveled on frozen roads, carried by riders who changed horses and kept galloping. In the cities, church bells tolled. Across rural hamlets, families lit candles in cabin windows. An unofficial day of mourning rose from collective instinct. Congress, draped chambers in black. Henry Lee, speaking before the House, coined words that would echo down generations. First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. Back at Mount Vernon, preparations unfolded with quiet precision. Washington's mahogany casket, lined in velvet, rested in the new room while clergy read verses by candlelight. On the fourth day, a funeral procession wound slowly to the family vault. Look how militia, cavalry, regimental bands playing muted dirges, 8 pallbearers drawn from among his closest military companions. The sky held a thin winter sun, breath plumed from every mouth like incantations of remembrance. Martha watched from the mansion's inner doorway, veil obscuring tears she chose to keep private. When the ceremony ended, she turned inward toward a life newly redefined by absence. Her grief, like his leadership, would be expressed in steadfast quiet across the nation. The question arose, what does a republic do when its living symbol is gone? The answer emerged slowly from citizens planting orchards in his honor, from city squares renamed, from paintings framed above mantels, from a collective vow to prove worthy of the ideals he embodied. Political rancor did not cease. Human nature assured it never would. Yet even the fiercest partisans spoke Washington's name with softened tone, as if a chapel had been built in common memory where voices must drop in respect. In the decades to come, stories multiplied, some true, some mythic, all carrying a single thread: steadfastness. Children learned that bravery could be silent, that greatness might ride home and hang its sword by the door. And so, under the hush of that last winter sky, the Potomac kept flowing. Fields lay dormant, awaiting spring. Wheat would rise again, orchards blossom, and the porch where he once stood would catch each dawn's first light. History, like the river, would move on, never forgetting the steady figure who once bridged colonies into union, then stepped aside so a nation could walk forward on its own. Tonight, dear listener, watch or feel the gentleness of that legacy. Let the cold December air outside your dreaming window carry no sorrow, only a hush of reverence. You need not shoulder Washington's burdens any longer. They have been lifted, honored, and laid to rest. All that remains is the soft glow of example, guiding future footsteps, the way a lantern guides travelers home. Breathe in, breathe out. Know that steadfastness can outlive flesh, that quiet virtue can echo wider than cannon thunder. Allow the lesson to settle over you like a woolen blanket. True power is not seized, but surrendered. True leadership is not command, but character. Sleep, then, under the same stars that watched the river that night. Sleep in the calm his departure left behind. And when morning comes, rise lightly carrying only peace. In the hush that followed his final breath, Mount Vernon itself seemed to sigh. Corridors that had once echoed with measured footsteps grew still, and the tall clocks softened their ticking as though time too were paying respects. Outside, a thin crust of ice-rimmed pasture ponds. Inside, the faint scent of cedar lingered where servants moved with reverent quiet, bowing to a silence deeper than grief. Word of his death traveled the frozen post roads with winter's urgency. Couriers exchanged horses and galloped on breath, rising like specters. Philadelphia's bells tolled for an hour without pause. New York lowered every flag to half-staff, and Boston's harbor guns boomed minute-by-minute salutes, their echoes rolling across grey water like distant thunder. In backcountry taverns, fiddles fell silent, mid-tune. In coastal churches, entire congregations knelt and whispered spontaneous litanies. Children pressed noses to icy window panes, repeating the name Washington, afraid it might fade without echo, yet at the estate routines held. Whether logs were entered, livestock counted, wheat measured, because the system he built was larger than any dawn. Martha, dressed in black silk, directed funeral preparations while greeting condolences with a nod so gentle it seemed to break upon the air. Her steady voice guided enslaved cooks simmering spiced cider, printers setting memorial handbills, and carpenters fashioning a bier from walnut boards he had once marked for a new gate. Even grief, here, moved in orderly lines. 4 days later, the procession formed. Militia marched first, drums muffled beneath wool so their cadence echoed like a heartbeat rather than a call to arms. Behind them rode Continental officers in faded blue and buff, colors brightened for this single duty, and Masonic brethren walked to abreast, carrying wands draped in black. The carriage bearing the casket reflected a sky drained of all color as it wound toward the family vault. Bare sycamores arching overhead like a cathedral nave. At graveside, a single prayer and 3 volleys of musket fire concluded the rites now. Royal fanfare, only earth, flag, and silence. Europe watched. In London, Parliament stood motionless. In Paris, Bonaparte ordered black crepe for every regiment, writing that mankind has lost its foremost citizen. The Times of London observed that kings might search their annals in vain for such a deed as surrendering power twice, across coffee houses and royal courts. The world struggled to fathom a victor who had stepped away and a republic that mourned without fear of collapse. Within America, citizens tested what life without him meant. President Adams proclaimed national mourning. Henry Lee's eulogy, first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen, crossed mountains, unfolded broadsheets, pinched between saddle and soldier. Even Jefferson, once so sharp a critic, wrote from Monticello that a great light has gone out, and we must tend its embers with care. The partisan press paused, if only briefly, and the fragile vessel of union seemed to glide forward on the still water of shared reverence. Ambitious monuments were sketched, pyramids rivaling Cheops, rotundas echoing St. Peter's, equestrian bronzes cast from melted British cannon. Funds faltered, yet his name seeped into the map. The planned federal city along the Potomac became Washington. Its broad avenue mirrored the straight perspectives he favored in gardens and governance. Counties, towns, and distant outposts on the Ohio claimed the name as talisman, hoping a syllable could confer steadiness. Legends sprouted like wildflowers. Schoolchildren repeated tales of cherry trees and skipped coins. Riverboat pilots swore the Potomac still bent its course to salute his lawn. Scholars winced, yet the stories endured because they pointed, however fancifully, toward one truth. Character outweighed spectacle. Parents found it easier to teach honesty by recounting a boy who would not lie than by quoting treaties and tariffs. And so myth and man grafted together until both roots fed the nation's soil. History soon tested the claim. Economic panics chilled commerce. French privateers harassed American ships. Newspapers that had briefly united returned to quarreling with sharper quills. Most daunting, unity cracked anew when blue and grey banners faced each other at Bull Run. On the eve of that conflict, Lincoln asked the Senate clerk to read Washington's farewell address aloud, trusting that the first president's warning against faction might steady hearts where laws could not. Through it all, the Potomac kept its rhythm. Mist curled over the river, drifted across the lawn, and brushed white columns like a silent benediction. Groundskeepers planted new elms where old ones fell. Enslaved craftsmen replaced roof shingles, their hammers ringing a subdued hymn. Visitors ferried across the water, climbed the slope, and entered rooms preserved in candlelit hush. Many paused before the worn chair in his study, half expecting it to scrape back with deliberate grace. In 1802, Martha followed him, and according to his will, the enslaved community at Mount Vernon gained freedom. Some settled nearby, forming hamlets on rented land. Others ventured north, carrying memories of labor, endurance, paradox, and promise. Their grandchildren would speak not only of Washington's stature, but of harvest songs and chains unlocked at dawn. Decades passed, railroads whistled, telegraph wires hummed, factories turned water into power, yet portraits of his deliberate gaze presided over one-room schoolhouses and Supreme Court chambers alike. In 1885, thousands gathered to dedicate a white obelisk piercing the sky marble distilled into a single upward breath. Sunlight struck its apex, and the crowd fell still, sensing in that streak of light the unclasped hand of a farmer still guiding crops and constitutions toward orderly rows. Immigrants landing at Ellis Island folded his story into new tongues. A general who would not be king, a citizen who stepped aside. Street vendors in Chicago quoted the cherry tree tale to wide-eyed children. Seamstresses in San Francisco stitched his silhouette onto parade banners. Even now, satellites photograph the Potomac bending round cherry trees he never saw bloom. Park rangers recite his breakfast of hoe cakes and honey, his meticulous farm ledgers, his conviction that greatness begins in restraint. High school seniors memorize lines from the farewell address. Cadets at West Point trace troop movements he once etched on parchment. Presidents in doubt slip a reproduction of his compass, rose into pocket or memory. So let the river continue its slow passage beneath moon-washed bridges. Let the porch he loved rest under cicada song and snow alike. Tonight, imagine that porch bathed in starlight, a lone lantern glowing steady as ever, welcoming travelers home. The man is gone, but the example remains quiet, substantial. Guiding dot, feel its calm settle through your chest like warm river water. Breathe out, as the nation once breathed out when war finally ended. Breathe in, as a new century once breathed. Impossibility. Let constellations wheel overhead, steady as convictions he lived by. And sleep, watched over by the enduring hush of character. Good night.